March meeting of the Kingston Public Library Board of Trustees at 6:02. And then we have Trustee Jen Quackenbush, Trustee Lee Lewis, and Trustee Carolyn Bromage, and myself, Emily Curtin, and Library Director Dr. The first item of business on the agenda, the minutes approval. So that was sent up. Any edits or changes that need to be made? Seeing any, I'll accept a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
I motion to accept the minutes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right. Second item is the Adams Center use policy review continued. So this is the edited version from our last review. What we removed and changed, I'm going to make you aware of as we go through. Our copies are edited, but it will put into the main copy and we will vote it through to go through the document. The first change made, go to under 3 scheduling and reservations. There was much discussion about before the event, which is on the second page. And the A was telephone or visit the staff at the library circulation desk. And Donald, you wanted that removed, right? Because
Correct.
It doesn't make any sense the way that we do it now. So it is removed. And now the first item is to check the library calendar. And there was a question about that, but that was checking just to see before you ask for a date to see if there's anything on the calendar, knowing that perhaps there might be something else that you're not aware of because it's not showing up on the calendar, but at least making that the first step before you check it. So that was the first change. The page after that, it's reduce that. So now it says 60 days, where it once said 12 months. And under 4 fees, weekday closure was stated in the prior copy. This should say weekdays 10 a.m. to closure, and the 10 a.m. does appear in the digital document, and we will be voting it through tonight as one of the changes. The fee, the second ask. It says Saturday and Sunday. I omitted the and Sunday. One sentence struck at the very end that said, however, the authorized rep dues and or the cost of refreshments. And so we omitted that with the policy. This part was a little confusing as I edited based on what we had said. I listened to the meeting and looked at my notes and realized we didn't come, but we did decide that under building use 5, at the end of the event B, it goes from 1 to 7 in the original document. We did 5, which was lock the door because they wouldn't be in charge of that. 6 was complete the attendance form and return it to the library. And 7 was return the key to the library. So none of those are relevant anymore, and they were all deleted. So now it ends at turn off the lights, which technically they probably don't even have to, but that's where we left it. And I think that was based on what brought up in the meeting. It doesn't mean it's the end of our edits forever. It just meant that was what happened in the first round. So the version that you have in front of you is the new edited version. So if you see something in there that's problematic or that you have questions about, we can look at that again. It can certainly be edited. We do still have that very specific section of prohibited and permitted event. If those were the areas in which you were quite with people inquiring, then that was what we had in February.
Good.
So I would take a motion to accept edits. And then it will now state finalize today. It's the date, and it doesn't mean we can't revisit it. It just means this is where we're at this moment. So I'll take them along.
Sure. I move to instate, accept, what have you, the building with the presented revisions effective today, March 24th, 2020.
Favor?
Aye.
Right, unanimous, accepted. So the next item on the list is the advocate update. So we'll run through that quickly, Donald.
Yes, so I just wanted to, I will share this with the board advocacy going on at the state level and as well at the national level, from ALA, MLA, with political things that are going on and grant funding for libraries. They kind of has arms for folks who go to their representative and there's support current bills in local protect libraries and librarians, as well as to also reach out to them in regards to bills that would be harmful. Last week that there was one that had been submitted in Falmouth, that was harmful a long time, because historically Massachusetts is a well-supported library state. The lots of feel about things that we see in other parts of the country, perhaps, but it is happening here. So I will share the list of I had gone to the legislative breakfast in Plymouth a couple of weeks ago, and so they had some statistics and something about their bills right now.
I think Deb had also spoken about members acknowledgement to Representative for the work that she carrying fully funding for libraries moving forward. So then we are on
So soon.
highlight on the
Oh, yes. So there is really focus on is the finance committee meeting, in which budget was recalled for discussion and revote. It's documented within the meeting that information that provided the finance committee members, basically, gave them an opportunity to have a better understanding of our accounts, of our, certification processes and requirements and things. So they did take a vote and did restore the money to the library's books and materials budget for fiscal 26. I was notified by the town administrator the morning after, concerning this. So obviously he's, was on board with that as well. So it looks like that we will be at least entering town meeting at the requested budget that meets the criteria for state aid and for certification.
So just for clarification, that cheat sheet that Donald gave to us at the last meeting was the same thing that was thankfully forwarded on to everyone on the finance committee after he realized that maybe there wasn't a full, thorough understanding of how the library budget worked. So that was a good idea.
So I've attended some, training sessions. One of the training sessions that I attended, I actually went with Holly and Karen. Meeting, we saw it in Zoom in my office. It was an MBLC training on making friends with people with and without disabilities. This is kind of coinciding with the town's movement to update its ADA compliance manual. We did have folks from the agency that came in, did a walkthrough of the building with myself, and we walked around and, they assessed, the various areas of the building, for compliance issues. For public spaces, it does not affect any staff offices or anything. It's just the public spaces. I will say that they did a job more thorough than the other agency that we had, come through. And I did bring them out to the back storage room to explain to them the future plans. So they did have feedback for that as well. And also with the potential future happenings, in the library, explaining what future changes may be occurring, brought them on board with understanding, and, they were given documentation to, have a better understanding of where we'll be at then. So they were, we did an internal, walkthrough. Then they had already done the Adams Center with the facilities manager, and so they were assessing the outside, including the parking lot, which we already know that there are some challenges with that, but also basically the sidewalk from the library entrance all the way down Green Street to the crosswalk. They were not familiar with the project of the state going to expand the crosswalk so that it was more ADA compliant. So they were thankful. They were actually thankful for a lot of the information that I recalled from the previous report, as well as, the future plans and, the situations that we're aware of that we're trying to address. So with that, we attended the MBLC, training session, and, we've kind of informally formed a informal subcommittee of staff to really analyze the facilities, as well as programming offerings and things that we can, opportunities for us to attract individuals of all abilities to utilize the library, and see what services that we can do in a broader kind of population. So that was really good. Let's see. On a bad note, the Story Bank computers. So for those of you who are not familiar, multiple years ago, I want to say maybe 4 or 5. Now, I believe there was an earmark grant from the legislature that was used to purchase these 2 Story Bank machines. And what they are basically, in our case, because I found that out there were variations, 2 laptops that had access to proprietary software that they were interactive. They were touchscreen devices in which individuals, there would be questions that folks would answer. So, for example, when I very first started here, one of our former select folks had taken it for the 9/11 anniversary to have people answer questions about, how it affected their lives, where were they and stuff like that when it occurred. And basically they would hit, answer the question, they'd select it, it would be recorded, the whole goal being retaining all histories and having video documentation of it. And so that was the only time that in the 3.5 years that I've been here that those devices have been used. We were approached by the Kingston 300th about using them for their upcoming events, to ask questions about, random things like perhaps, what's your favorite memory of Kingston, or your favorite, place in Kingston that you know, loved or what have you. And so it, you know, obviously prompted myself and the archivist to look at these machines and, you know, access them and try to, you know, figure out how to use them basically. Because none of these, there was only one staff member, which was the former archivist, was the only staff member that was trained to use them. And so we did figure the majority of things out, but the big question was, how do you change the questions? And it was discovered that, so I was reaching out to the proprietor of this software that unfortunately had an untimely passing a couple of years ago. And so I reached out to some of the other agencies that have this equipment, which basically were all these random museums all across the country. So I'm very familiar with the Greensboro Historic Museum in Greensboro, North Carolina now, and working with their, you know, staff there. You know, I explained the situation, you know, I basically said, I just need to learn how to update these questions. And it turns out that it was a CMS system, which means that you log into a website to update the information, and then you re-download it to the computer itself. So as I was talking to the staff person, they attempted to do this, because obviously in their situation, they have questions for an exhibit. Those questions are going to be the same questions for years, you know, whereas we would be special projects change routinely. And they did not have access. They were unable to update those questions. And my understanding after doing my informal research, learning of people who know people, it is a situation where evidently the family did not have the password, so the servers were not maintained and updated. So unfortunately, these devices are not effective for this project. However, I do feel that where the library had made, you know, in a way, a commitment to offering such technology, that both myself, and this happened all late last week, myself and Nick, the archivist, we are looking into other systems that can provide the same outcomes, but obviously not at the cost that these particular devices were.
I have to imagine that, I mean, because usually the trend in technology is once it becomes something that's recognized as being successful or functional or useful, that they more people get on board with some version of that, and then therefore it becomes less expensive to acquire it. So hopefully, since we're 5 years out from probably the initial acquisition, that maybe if we're looking into something that services patrons in the same way, there's probably a more cost-effective way to do it now.
Absolutely. And talking to Nick, he is aware that BPL, what they do with oral history is they more have recorders that patrons can actually check out. And so he was going to reach out to them and, you know, find out more information if they had, yeah, like a recorder. And, you know, my only thing with that, you know, I thought about is that, you know, you lose kind of the demographics in the sense of like, you know, that if a story is being shared, you know, by an individual of a certain age, whether it's on either ends of the scales, it kind of gives a different perspective. And with the audio, if you don't have identifying information, you know, obviously we don't want to be in a situation where we're going to have a system where you're going to say, you know, hi, my name is Emily, I am this age, and, you know, other demographics about yourself, so that the listener, future listener, has some kind of concept as to what perhaps perspective or standpoint you're coming from on whatever the various topics are. So I do think that we would probably still stay with a video related system, but I am sure that there are options that will be more cost efficient than those ones.
I have kind of a speculative question, I guess, which is these are being loaned out to individual library users, right? Is there any kind of content moderation policy around it, or is that something that we're just going to learn in the course of the research? Because as someone who used to work with teenagers, I know about 500 kids who would take one of those devices and say something inappropriate into it.
They were
No.
set up
So-
inside the library
Okay.
when they were set up for the 9/11. I believe they did them on site, didn't they?
So the select woman actually took one of the units to the farmer's market. So there is a lot of control. This is like, these aren't like, the story banks themselves were not specifically something like, they're not part of the library of things
Okay.
sort of situation. It was over 20,000 for the two of them, so they're not going to go in regular
Yeah.
circulation.
That makes sense.
To have put it there. So basically, like this was, a special project. So the ask was made, and we kind of went with it. So it would be something like that. So like I with the story banks themselves, I would not be comfortable allowing like it not be a staff assisted
Mhm.
system. So if it is a case that a particular group wanted to have used them, at the farmer's market, then I would require either myself or perhaps the archivist to be there just in case there were, potential issues, whether in transport or whatever,
Right.
so that it takes that kind of liability, off. But I do think that perhaps with the alternatives that, might be presented, that it could be more of a low key, thing, or it could just be like in library use system, that could be lent out to groups for, same thing. I mean, really, when you get down to it, is a case of, it is just making a video of yourself answering questions, using like with this one, with the existing story banks, they were touchscreen laptops. So, what can be the more economic way where we don't have a website needed? Is it a case of we have a sign with the specific questions so
Yeah.
that you're just taking a video of yourself answering those
I was thinking
questions?
like a voice note of yourself. For
Something, something like that.
I also can't imagine the writing of a policy in which we had to police the use. of
No, I mean, it's one of those,
story banks.
it's one of those things I hate to ask because I don't want to be the person who sees the worst in people right off the bat, but I just figure,
Well, from a practical standpoint, you have to.
Well, that's what I think, like,
You're a
any-
realist.
exactly, any
Yeah.
kind of, user-generated content, I would assume would be best served, if possible, by some kind of content moderation, whatever that might look like. Whether it's, staff assistance, obviously, or whatever the case might be.
Yes. We, as you may know, if you've seen that one side of the sign is out again. Yes, after there was a power outage. I don't know if it affects other users, attendees.
A
but-
power outage at the sign.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it was the full library. I think it was like one of the rainstorms or something. And so it was out. And then when we turned it back on, the left-hand side of the southbound facing, sign is out.
The sign closest to the road, the side closer to the road
Yes.
naturally.
So the sign company had tentatively scheduled for last Monday to be on site. The previous Friday, they emailed and said that they would be looking at working with their team to confirm things. And then once I mentioned that the sign was out, I was then met with, oh, it's going to be a few weeks, sort of situation. So if you hear any, feedback about the sign, that is standing. We are aware of it. We are still working on it, and hope that the necessary repairs will be done quickly, as well as the repairs maintain the stability of the technology for a long period of time. And speaking of technology and stuff, I have attended multiple meetings at the townhouse, working with various department heads and others to go over the town's website redesign. We're not looking at the actual content, but more, putting on a new dress, adding some different shade of lipstick and stuff. That is what we've been tasked with. and it will involve some restructuring, different displayed information, but I want to say we've had like 4 or 5 meetings in regards to this. And once it gets settled with the town side, it will then, this project we're trying to get done by June, from our standpoint. And then it will then go to the library's header, since our website is basically a page off of the town's website. But we don't share we reroute the web address. So kingstonpubliclibrary.org still works, even though it's the kingstonma.gov/219 library address. So that has taken up a lot of my time. With that, we are planning next Monday. We had some required training from the town that needed to be done, which was fire extinguisher training, as well as evacuation planning training. So we were able to get it scheduled for next Monday afternoon. So we will be closing early at 1:30. The training actually starts at 1:30. Besides that, Human Resources will be coming to do a presentation on some of the benefits that are available to employees, any changes in, medical plans, things like that, as well as we will have the Plymouth Law Library will be doing a presentation, which I'm very excited about. I saw them at they had come to a members council meeting, and they basically were kind of selling themselves to say, hey, we can go to the public library and do presentations to, educate the staff on what areas of legal questions they should or should not be answering, and putting up the boundaries and knowing when to, refer to them. They do get delivery. They're part of the statewide delivery system. They do ILL. They have lots of databases, and they also will do public programs. Kind of like landlording 101 and other things. So we can definitely tap into for future adult programming and stuff. So they will be coming and doing a presentation for us. And then at the same time, if time allows, we will have a study. But there's a lot of content within those 3 things.
Can you do it while you're handling the fire extinguishers?
I'm sure we could. But I think those were the main highlights. Oh, we are still working. The health department initiative, and with programming, a suggestion that a former Board of Health member who has been very active in spearheading this, that beginning in September, I basically created a chart with various health topics, primarily, National Heart Month, National, Suicide Prevention Month, or what have you, and asked for her to work, folks, professionals who can come in and do, talks on those specific health, related subject, so that it isn't just a focus on kids, but the overall, so that was actually, a productive meeting. We are looking at alternative to some of the items that they were requesting to perhaps do, such as that previously the library had invested in these backpacks, but it was kind of problematic maintaining, first of all, cataloging a lot of pieces, that there is a lot of work putting into processing them, but also, just maintaining them, because basically if one piece goes missing, you have a piece missing from a puzzle. And some things we can break up and utilize them. Like if there's a book in the back, use that in one of the physical book sections, but if there are things format or just wouldn't be conducive to circulating solely. So I also came up with ideas about more health-related equipment items. There were children dumbbells, like this hopscotch, kind of grid thing, as well as some other activities that we can use that is basically still items that can be used as part of the kids library things collection, and that was well received. You know, looking to that as well. And then last I will go statistics. So we did see an increase in stats from February over January. Still having a steady use of Hoover, still very high. For the actual percentage, obviously, is still negative. We are once again the most improved where we are compared to other libraries. In comparison to the other, so we are, where we need to be getting ahead. Any questions?
We can move on to the staff reports. Did anyone have any issues or questions, comments on the staff reports? Deb is not with us this evening. From the foundation, so hopefully if you're available, you'll be able to swing by with family, friends, whatever. Of the bills, we have no bills. Under old business, the 300th, the Kingston 300th book committee, the committee in general would like to come back to April's meeting, right? Next
That is
month's meeting.
correct.
So just with that, some thematic programming things that will work with what they have planned, as they wanted to discuss those things with the trustees.
That is correct. And as part of the request, there were actual dollar amounts.
That's why I can
Forward
forward
it
on
to the
everyone
board
with
so that everyone,
information for the next meeting. So see this prior to. Other old business? Not seeing any new business. You're on.
So as far as new business, one thing that I'm in June, American Library Association is having its annual conference. To allow me to use state aid to fund my attendance at that convention. It would be something that with the convention, it would just be the initial cost to attend. Housing would not be an issue, so there's no hotel or anything like that.
He's staying with his cousins.
Yes, the fun relatives.
Where are you gonna stay?
Yeah.
So just get where you can go.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I mean, so the request is for and I believe I want to say it's like 4 something for the early bird. So I wanted to, and obviously this would be something that would be I've just spaced out on the word. I pay for it and then I get reimbursement. There we go. That it would be something that'd be reimbursed. So if I was to get the approval from the board, it would, because the early bird does end March 31st, and obviously to be able to save funds for the for the library, if I can get the, okay for that. It is kind of a quirky schedule because it is actually over the weekend as well. So I will have to figure out my schedule because it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So with the weekend included, I have to figure out how the pay cycle will work in the sense of, obviously if it's going to be split, but that's an aside, sort of thing. So yeah, so this would, it is, the national conference for libraries. And I do think that as part of, everything that's going on as far as advocacy and so forth, that, that it would be, valuable to have someone, attend that. And I am making the request for state aid versus going through the scholarship, fund from the foundation, as I'm aware that there are, staff members that have, interests. And when I do think of staff, I don't think of myself. So I just feel like that is a benefit, for them. So yes, so I have a request for that.
I mean, I think it's something that we can discuss and vote on right now. Everybody's comfortable with that.
Yes.
I will say that I'm all for it. I think the fact that it's actually an accessible national conference, it's not on the West Coast.
Yes.
It's not like, and it always, I think, is a benefit to the library and the community to have somebody there just to hear what's going on a national level, especially maybe this particular year when a lot of the national decision-making is kind of disappearing.
I'm inclined to agree. I will say, as a fellow ALA member with family in the Philly area, I'm very jealous. But I believe it would be good to have representation there. And like you mentioned, Emily, have, more boots on the ground, I guess, in terms of learning about advocacy.
So, any thoughts other than that? Then I will take a vote. All in favor of Donald using state aid in order to attend the ALA conference. Say aye. Aye. And anyone opposed? All right, and it is a unanimous aye vote.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Under new business, I also wanted to say that the first full week in April is National Library Week, and I usually try to bring in something for the staff here, like muffins, coffee, pastries, whatever. I am working that week. It's fallen before April vacation, which has been great, so I can just run in here and drop it off. So if there is a trustee who's willing to help out with that and coordinate it, there, yes.
Let me get back to you on that.
Okay.
Like within 48 hours, send money.
Okay.
Have a lot.
I would love it for me during that week. It certainly doesn't have to be because we can wait until April vacation and I can just do it then. Who turns down pastries? I mean, when they come, then they come in. But that is actual National Library Week. So
The first week of April,
it's the 6th through the, I'll give you the exact
our
dates.
first full week, I guess.
Yes, the 6th through the 12th. So at some point during the Monday through Friday of that week, Donna, which day is it that everybody works at some point? Is it Thursday? Or the
Tuesday and Wednesdays.
Tuesday, Wednesday, right? That was completely misread.
Yes, actually Wednesdays. Wednesdays would be.
Well, if you need help with that stuff there, like I don't work until 1:30 on either one of those days, so if you need things to come in.
That would be great. Usually I
Yeah.
try to either order in advance at like Blueberry Muffin or something like that.
Do you need me to do the ordering, or will you do the ordering? You just need.
Either way, I mean, it would be great if you're the one picking it up, or if somebody's picking it up, if they can order, it's usually just an assortment, enough for the whole staff. And then they do the boxes of coffee there as well.
Okay.
But we can talk about it.
Okay.
I hate to spoil.
I
this.
can get it here.
Yeah. Much appreciated. All right, so then we are all set for your attendance to the conference, National Library Week, and in terms of old business, next meeting having the 300th committee here.
Correct.
Okay.
And I just want to verify the meeting date for April. because I think I have it in as the 21st, but that is Patriots Day. So did we
And
do
they switched it to the
28th?
I have it as
Yeah.
the 28th.
I think we
Okay.
moved it. There were a lot of meetings. We wanted it to be earlier in the month, but it just kept happening at the very end
Yep.
of the month.
Very end of the month, yeah.
Okay.
Great. Then, not seeing any other new business, I will take a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn our meeting at 6:45.
Second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
We are officially
Actually,
adjourned.
6:42.
6:42.